Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Susan Morgan. I'm the founder and director of IndiMarin. And this is a meeting where we will give you the latest and greatest strategic advice on how to have impact in this moment. So before I get into my presentation, I'd like to introduce four other women without whom none of this would be happening. First of all, I'd like to introduce Andy Triolo, who was on our steering committee and managing the Zoom. She also runs our texting program when texting is active, and it will be soon for the general election. Marianne Ross is a lead on our membership team and also in postcarding. A lot of us wear many hats, as you might imagine. So we all, Marianne, though, is the person that manages our membership onboarding, which is fabulous. Also, Joy Martin, who leads our in-person postcarding program at Panera, which is a wonderful opportunity here in Marin to be in community. And Lori Friedman is our strategic advisor on all things electoral and wears other hats as well. I'm not sure if you're getting background noise. I'm in Manhattan at my daughter's house, and my 4-year-old grandson is running around. So apologies if there's a little background noise while I'm speaking. Okay, Andy, if you could start the slides. Great. So as I said, this meeting, we're going to focus on opportunities to make an impact now. So we've got a full agenda. I'm going to say just a couple of words in opening to set the stage, then turn it over to Lori, who will cover an introduction to IndiMarin or a reintroduction. Many of you have been with us for a while, but we want you to know kind of the latest of who Indivisible Marin is in this moment. She will also cover the state of the resistance and the overall political landscape, discuss our priorities for you in August through October. And as you can imagine, now the special election in California has risen to the top. But there will also be opportunities to work in Virginia, which is also a crucial election for us to win in terms of it being a bit of a predictor or bellwether for the midterms. Then I'm going to talk about personal outreach. We really need to get more people involved in the fight, in the movement. We're going to talk about some easy ways that we can all be doing this in our daily lives. I'll do a quick walkthrough of the website, very brief, but just so you're all oriented and can find the follow-up actions yourself on the website. We don't want to be dropping a bunch of links into the chat. That stresses people out. It gets very confusing. So instead, we're going to give you a walkthrough of the website so you'll be empowered. We're going to teach you to fish and teach you how to find what you need for yourself on the website. Then we'll save time, hopefully, for Q&A. If it gets tight, we'll stay on after the hour to answer remaining questions. And then just want to give you the message that we hope that there is a final step in the agenda, and that is up to you. That's what you do with what you hear here, and you make your plan going forward. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Lori for her portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Susan. I see a lot of familiar faces here tonight. Thank you so much for joining. It's great to see old friends come, and I know a lot of people are new. So I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking about our organization. For those of you that aren't as familiar with us, we've had the same mission for 8 years, taking action to create a more caring, just, and inclusive America. We've kept the same commitment over these years to put impactful work out there for you where you're going to make the biggest difference, to bring a wealth of experience with our volunteer leaders. We come from all different kinds of backgrounds, and we bring that together as we work as activists now. And our deep commitment to creating a sense of community, both online and in person. Our membership is about 13,000 now across the country. Right now, 40% of our members are here in Marin County, and the rest are evenly divided between elsewhere in California and 30% about in other states. Next slide, please. Brief history of our organization. Susan is far too modest. She started this group in 2017, literally with a friend in her living room, and it has now grown to 13,000 people in 8 years. We are a legacy chapter of the national group Indivisible, meaning that we were one of the first and original chapters and are still here 8 years later. Indivisible was started by 2 congressional staffers who, after working on the Hill for a while, felt that there was a need for improved organizing after Trump was first elected. And they basically sat down and they wrote a guide. And 8 years later, they're married now with a family and have developed one of the largest grassroots organizing structures in the United States. They're a tremendous resource for us. And we're been very proud to stand with them, for 8 years. The first couple of years that we did this work, we concentrated on in-person organizing, learning how to protest, put together postcarding programs and phone banks, and working for candidates and advocating for issues. When the pandemic hit in 2020, we pivoted online, and with the advent of the Mobilize platform, we made a conscious decision to go national. We live in a very blue district, and we don't need to do a lot of work right here around House and Senate work in California. So we concentrated on those purple areas here and all the battleground states in the country and developed large postcarding, phone banking, text banking programs, developed a strong interest in really voter education and member education. We love to hold calls like this and explain what's going on out in the world and give people a wide choice of actions to take. As we came out of the pandemic, brought back a lot of in-person work. Joy's program, her postcarding program went back into place and has grown a lot since then. With 2025, things changed because with Trump 2.0, there was a renewed focus on the need for protests and non-cooperation types of efforts in local communities. So we re-emphasized that. We didn't lose our national focus, but we refocused on our own area. Susan and other leaders here in Marin County have formed a coalition to create sort of infrastructure around protests. It's been highly, highly successful. And so now we're at this point where we feel we're in a hybrid organizing mode. We have local and national members. We work locally here and close by in our House districts, but we're also skilled and connected with all the major battleground states in the country. Like I said, we have a focus now on education and training, not only our members, but bringing people in that have never done anything before and getting them started with things like phone banking and writing a postcard. We've also developed over 8 years skills in both the advocacy side of organizing and the election side. And that's a pretty large umbrella. In even years, we tend to focus on elections, but in odd years, we've been focusing on advocacy. And advocacy means standing up for an issue, working around an issue. Maybe it's a bill in Congress or in Sacramento. Maybe it's working to let people know how their Republican representative is not representing them. And what's helpful now is that in the age of resistance organizing, we need to be able to do both of those things to be effective. We have to work in elections. We have to be skilled in those tactics, but we also need to know how to advocate around issues. Next slide, please. What does the resistance work really mean? Where are we right now? Where are we as far as an update in this movement? Some core concepts to start with is that we have to be working on that long game, those elections. At the same time, we're dealing with this rapid response organizing. 10 days ago, we had no idea there was going to be an election in California in November. Now it's our top priority. Things are changing very quickly. It seems like every day we need to reorient ourselves around a different issue and a different need out there. Balancing those two things is a skill that we're all getting better and better at every day. We're doing this without a precedent or a template. There is no playbook for this. We're throwing a lot of things out there as a movement and as a party and seeing what sticks. Our elected officials have never been in this situation before, and they are learning that they have to be more than legislators now, much more than they ever thought they would sign up for. And the third core concept that I find really important that I need to remind myself of all the time is that as the minority party, we don't have very many opportunities to really gain traction. We don't have opportunities to fight back. They almost have to be given to us. And so when they appear, we have to take advantage of them immediately because they are going to be limited. The sort of milestones and things that we're working towards is what Susan's going to be talking about, is this growth to 3.5%. And that number is tossed around quite a bit out there on calls these days. And it really comes out of some sort of groundbreaking gold standard work that was done by two political scientists that looked at authoritarian regimes across the country and successful resistance movements. What did they have in common? What didn't work and what did work? We don't need to stick to that in exact detail, but it is very, very helpful. And one of the things that all successful resistance efforts that eventually led to the decline of an authoritarian regime was that there was slow organic growth to at least 3.5% of your population, which is about 12 million people. We're not there yet, but we're much better than we were a couple months ago. We also want to look for defections, and we know that we're being successful when we see people from the other side, especially high-level individuals, defect. And that's what we saw in Trump 1.0. We saw people leave his inner circle. We saw people leave his cabinet. We saw people like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger just buck their party and actually actively investigate their own party. We haven't seen that yet. He's surrounded himself by people that are less likely to do that. But when we see them, we know we're starting to make a difference. And of course, nonviolent resistance is the only successful way. Authoritarian regimes will flourish in a violent environment. It just gives them an excuse to be worse. Fortunately, there's no risk of that. Our movement has been entirely nonviolent. 3 tools that we need to use and that we are using: public defiance, accountability, and non-cooperation. And if any of you attended those trainings by the national group on non-cooperation, some of this is definitely ties into what they were talking about. Next slide, please. This is a great chart that I found talking about who can do what in a resistance, or who does it best. And I love Barack Obama's quote that democracy is not a spectator sport. We have to participate to keep it going. The first area of democracy is the executive branch. We know that they in no way are functioning in a democratic way. They're not even on the chart. In Congress, we're very focused on our minority party because the majority party has abdicated their role in checks and balances. So they also don't really exist as far as this movement to protect our democracy. We don't have a lot of power in Congress right now, and that's just the sad fact of it. There's some of the things that the Senate is doing. They're filibustering when they can. They're delaying when they can. They could probably be a lot stronger, but in the end of the day, there's not much that Congress can do except to be very loud. And that's where we, I think, have centered on right now, is pressuring them to be very loud. And whether that's coming to a protest in their district, or having a vote-a-rama, or taking 30 hours on a speech on the Senate floor, those kinds of things gain attention. They amplify our message, but in and of itself, they're not going to be able to do a lot until they become the majority party, and that is obviously the goal. The judiciary, some updates on them. I think we've done very well in the lower levels of the courts. There's actually been quite a few setbacks for the Trump administration that they have dropped and not appealed. But when they have appealed and they've gone up the levels of the courts, we're seeing, I think, less and less success, which is concerning. And then the second area that we're starting to see a concern about is, even when the decisions go against Republicans, are they actually following through? How is the judiciary going to hold an entire branch of government accountable for a decision? How do you hold them in contempt? And I think that's an issue that we're all struggling with, and I think they're struggling with it themselves. We've seen a lot of success with state governments. They're filing lawsuits, and that's where most of our wins have come. 23 blue states that have banded together to form what is essentially a class action lawsuit. And this is where we're having the best success. And we're also seeing them be able to function in what is the hardest tool to use, which is non-cooperation. It's difficult. Non-cooperation usually results in a lot of sacrifice. It's very, very difficult to do, limited opportunities. But we saw the Texas legislature walk out last week. That is certainly non-cooperation. Non-cooperation is just the ability to interfere or disrupt the functioning of government, and it is difficult to do when you're the minority party. The California special election is the strongest example we've seen yet of non-cooperation, actual interference in the ability of the executive branch to meet their own goals. I'd love to talk more about the press. We don't have a lot of time today, but we've made huge progress in our ability to be out there in the media world. We have made great strides in independent media. The Midas Touch Network now is the #1 political podcast in the country, surpassing Republican outlets. We've seen tremendous growth in Substack. I think you all probably have your favorites. There's so many to choose from now. It is literally growing by the day. We have a good list of some ones that we recommend on our website. I think where we still need to work is that movement into non-political online. That's where Trump was. That's where MAGA was. They were on gaming sites and sports rooms and parenting sites, spreading their misinformation and registering voters. We're not there yet. We're starting to see some movement there, but this is an area that we're going to have to get much better at if we're going to win national elections in the future. And lastly, the citizens, that's us. That's the other branch of a democracy. And you can see that we are the strongest branch. We are the ones that have the most amount of tools. And that's what that 3.5%. If we're functioning at 3.5% and using all those tools, we will be able to bring this administration into this administration. We have a role in public defiance, in accountability and non-cooperation. Next slide, please. So how do we actually do that, and how are we doing it? Are we making progress? Number one, stay informed. And you're all here tonight. I think you've all created your news world that you're going to be living in. There's a lot of choices right now. We need to get to 3.5%. And the biggest tool that we have to do that is within our own personal outreach. And Susan's going to cover that in detail. I just want to cover a few other things before she starts. I want to talk about what we're doing in the world of public defiance and how you all can be contributing to that. Basically, what we've done is take things that are existing, tools that we have, resources that we have, and using them in a different way. And using like what Susan's done and leaders here in Marin have done by coming together and forming a coalition to lead protests is a perfect example. Everybody needs to look to their own local community for the groups that are doing this. There are national clearinghouses that can help you identify where you are. But protests are the biggest tool we have right now. It amplifies our message. It grows, it brings people in, and is by far something that we still haven't figured out exactly how often to hold them and how big, and we'll be going back and forth with that over time. But protests are absolutely part of every successful resistance movement in history. And we've done some great ones. We've had the biggest protest in American history was No King's Day. Representative town halls is something that we were used to having. People held them. Our elected representatives would send us an email. We would go. They would tell us what they're doing. We might ask a few questions. We need to pivot on that a little bit, and we need to make sure that these are citizen-led town halls, that we are asking for them, insisting on them if we're not getting them, and that we submit questions and make sure that our representatives are answering our concerns about what they're doing in Washington, even if they're the minority party and have limited roles. They need to hear our suggestions. They need to hear what's happening in their own district. So if you're not seeing them and if you're not getting them in your district, you need to insist on that. Get a group together, make your phone calls. Most people are doing them. Most blue representatives are doing them, but definitely a critical part of being in the public eye and showing that defiance and that energy. Accountability is one of our greatest tools because we alone can control an election. Only us can vote people in or out. But what we've been able to do, and those of you that have phone banked for a while and postcarded before, you know the drill. You know that we write to voters and say, please vote for so-and-so for this office. We're using that same technology now to reach our elected officials, to instead of asking those voters in Ohio or the Central Valley to vote for somebody, we're asking them to call that person, to call their representative and show that defiance, show that energy. And so we're taking tools that we already have, using them in a slightly different way. It's been very, very effective. One of the reasons that the Republicans are panicking right now is because they have felt our anger. They have felt our energy. If you have a Republican representative that isn't holding a town hall, we've seen hundreds now of people's town halls across the country, and that is where Democrats will go into their neighboring Republican district and hold their own town halls if that Republican doesn't want to do that. And this is something that if you are in a district where you haven't had a town hall, please reach out, and we can try to get you hooked up with neighboring representatives or the national group, and they can help you hold a people's town hall. Ultimately, it will come down to elections, and everything that we're doing now is still pointing us in that direction and growing our infrastructure. But certainly the typical voter outreach will continue, and partisan voter registration will be a huge emphasis in the next year. All counties should be doing it, especially if you're in a purple district. Non-cooperation is the hardest. It involves a lot of sacrifice. What are the kinds of things that you can be doing? Every community should be doing some kind of citizen ICE protection training to protect our immigrant communities. If there's nobody in your area that's doing them, we recommend the ACLU. They have a wonderful online program, but everybody should be prepared for what to do should there be ICE activity in their communities. We can participate in local and national boycotts. And there may be opportunities for individual acts of non-cooperation depending on your situation. A librarian that refused to take down her gay family exhibit in her library is an example when pressured by her local government. But we can support the large efforts. The effort in California is a typical example. We can participate in non-cooperation by putting in place these maps and leveling the playing field in 2026. And fundraising will continue as usual. Next slide, please. Couple of current priorities right now where we can actually use a lot of these tactics. In Virginia, they will have their statewide elections in November. Virginia is just one of 2 states in the country that hold their statewide elections in odd years, so we're used to working in them in these odd years. They currently have right now a 1-seat majority in their House and their Senate, and their House is up for re-election, all of them. They have a Republican executive branch that came into power during the pandemic, hoping to replace them with Democrats. Harris won this state by 6 points, so we should be able to do this and put it back in our column. That's another state that will participate in these coalition of governments suing the federal government. But one of the main advantages or one of the main reasons we want to win Virginia is it's a bellwether to the midterms. How Virginia does usually correlates to how we do in the midterms. So we want to see a big win, not just a little win. We need to see a huge win, gain some momentum, start some more effective fundraising, get people more confident in the party. We've actually overperformed in every election in the country since November. Hopefully we'll do the same here, but there's a lot of opportunity to postcard, phone bank, knock on doors, all of that. It's on our website. And that was going to be our main priority this fall, but of course now we have the special election. So I just want to talk about that briefly before I turn it over to Susan. And talk a little bit about redistricting, why we're doing this, sort of clear up some of the misconceptions. Basically, in the United States, there's 2 different ways to draw districts. Most Republican states use their own state legislatures to draw their own districts. That's inherently unfair with a conflict of interest, but they've done it forever. And this is why we have ended up with such severe gerrymandering on the Republican side. We gerrymandered too, so there is some gerrymander on the Democratic side, but much less because over the last 20 years or so, most blue states use now independent commissions to redistrict, and they're made up by non-elected people, equal numbers of Republicans and Democrats, to come up with what is hopefully a more fair and balanced maps. There's still a little bit of bias towards whatever party is dominant in every state, but it's much better in blue states. So what happened a couple of weeks ago actually started because of some data that was released. President Trump's approval rating falling to 38%. The poll, the generic poll that asks people, would you rather see Democrats or Republicans in charge of Congress, came back at 5 to 6 points for Democrats. That is historically high. We normally would never see that. The percentage of people that are identifying more with the Democratic Party over the Republican Party widened to double digits, as did the enthusiasm gap between Democrats and Republicans. This was sort of a death sentence, actually, for the Republicans and the midterms, and they knew it. And the next thing that happened was Trump called the governor in Texas and asked him to find 5 seats, which they did. So we responded. Next slide, please. With the maps they are right now, there's a clear path for us to take back the House. There's a small majority. We only need to win 3 or 4 seats. A clear way to do that, and everybody knew that. Even a slight possibility to win the Senate. If the Republicans went out and created 5 new seats in Texas, and it looks like they're going to create a few more in Ohio and Indiana, that's a bridge too far. And even with the energy on our side, because of the severe gerrymandering of the country, there just is not enough for us to be confident in our ability to close that gap and come out with the majority. So the California governor, Gavin Newsom, and his team in Sacramento came up with a solution. It's called the Rigged Election Response Act. And this is a quote from the national president of the National Redistricting Committee, which is one that is dedicated towards nonpartisan commission redistricting. Said this is the responsive, responsible, temporary, and democratic effort to rebalance the promise of a representative democracy. And this is a bill that needs to first pass our own state government, which it's in the process now, and it will be passed by the end of the week. It creates the infrastructure to hold an election in November, and it also transfers money from the state into the county so that they're able to financially afford to hold this unplanned election. What it means as far as redistricting, it's going to create 3 solidly new democratically new seats and 2 additional ones that will likely also flip. So 5 new seats. This levels the playing field. We're going to have the power to do this. Texas just did this arbitrarily. They got no input from their citizens whatsoever. In fact, many people in Texas were against doing this. Here, we get to decide if this is something that we're going to do or not. It's fair and proportional to what's being done in Texas. It's temporary. These maps will only be in place through 2030. In 2030, we'll have a new census, and in elections after that will be, the districts will be drawn by our independent commission, which does stay in place during these 4 years. It's triggered only if a Republican state redistricts mid-decade. So anytime between now and 2030, if any state redistricts, these maps will automatically kick in for the next election. But if they don't do anything, we don't do anything. Whether this happens is entirely dependent on Republicans. And there's language in this that commits us to supporting nationwide redistricting independent commissions. It's a great website that's up. It's called stopelectionrigging.com for more details if you want to get into the details. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Susan, and she'll be talking about ways that we can work in our own small circles to maximize our impact. And I can answer questions at the end of the hour.
Great. Thank you, Lori. You can see why Lori leads our electoral work. She's just a wealth of very complex information. We're just thankful that she's on our team. So she's referenced this, very commonly cited statistic of 3.5% of citizens need to be actively engaged in a fight to effectively replace an authoritarian regime. This has been studied by experts that, have done research over the years, and this is what they're telling us, is that we need to get to 3.5%. Per Leah and Ezra, the leaders of Indivisible National, another couple of very smart people, we're at about half that, I believe, is where we're at. So there's a long way to go. And national organizations, of course, are trying to recruit more members. Groups like ours, of course, we're trying to recruit more members. But the most effective way to get more people engaged in the fight is through personal conversations, personal outreach, because people listen to those people they know and respect. So this is what we're asking all of you to do. It's kind of an easy ask because it can be woven into our daily life in such a way that it doesn't really need to take that much time and it can be done at your convenience. So I wanted to highlight three tactics as examples. There's countless more, and we welcome your creativity and your own thinking about, gee, how can I in my daily life, in my personal circles, get more people involved? But these three examples can just kind of get your brain percolating. Maybe these will work for you. Maybe you want to come up with some other ideas as well. But the first, and we tried to keep this just like plain English. There's lots of buzzwords for this. People call it relational organizing, and there's apps, and it gets really complicated, but it really doesn't need to be. So, the first, engage in conversations in your daily life. And here are a few opportunities. Um, Joy Martin on our steering committee, I think, has recruited more people to Indivisible Marin over the years than anybody else. I would venture to say easily 100, if not more. And she's talked to us about her secrets. And, one is we all end up if we're at a dinner with friends or any kind of a social event, conversation turns to politics, everyone starts griping, right? Oh, ain't it awful? Our country's going into, hell in a handbasket. I'm so depressed, so awful. Well, rather than chime in, I mean, it's fine to say, I know it is terrible, it is scary, but then offer up the, the solution. Just say, if we all work on this and join the fight, we can fix this. And then, get a little specific. I have joined IndiMarin, and I'm actually finding that there's a lot of constructive ways I'm helping. And I'd love for you to join with me. I'm going to this postcard writing event next Tuesday. Would you like to come? Or there's a Zoom meeting, or can I send you the link to their website and you can sign up there and see the newsletter. So just spring into positivity in these opportunities with people that you know are like-minded because they're discouraged and complaining. Similarly, chit chat, right? We bump into people, we're out walking the dog, we're at the grocery store, we bump into someone maybe we haven't seen in a while. And what's normally said is, hey, how are you? Well, we could say, oh, I'm okay, or I'm fine, just got back from a trip to Hawaii. So, but we're saying, how about saying something like, I'm not great. I'm just really worried about our country. Pause. See how they respond. Maybe some people aren't game, like they're like, oh, don't want to deal with this. But you might be surprised how many people are like, oh, I know. And then you've got them in a conversation, someone who is also worried. And again, you share with them a little bit about what you've been doing, that you're happy to help them connect with a local group where they can take action. And, then you've brought them in. Um, the other thing we found really successful, and we learned this last year when we had our Dems Make Life Better t-shirt line. But if you wear a pro-democracy t-shirt going about your daily lives, again, dog walk, grocery store, wherever, they are conversation starters. And Lori actually had this great anecdote. It was on, I don't know, a couple of protests ago. I think it was the John Lewis protests, and she wore some kind of a political pro-democracy t-shirt. And out, unexpectedly, she had to take her dog to the vet because he'd eaten something he shouldn't have. And so she ends up at the vet in this pro-democracy t-shirt. And she's like, I can't believe how many people sitting in the waiting room like commented on it, wanted to learn more. I think it might have even been one of our older IndiMarin shirts, and we are planning a line of more IndiMarin shirts, but don't wait for our line, just get something off the internet. Even the vet commented. So these are just all ways that are so easy. Put ourselves out there. Maybe for some of you who are shy or private, this feels like it might take a little bit of bravery. So let's be a little brave. Or for some of us who are outgoing, it doesn't take any trouble at all when you just start thinking along these lines. So that's one, engage in conversations when you have the opportunity to draw people in. Hosting gatherings, this is becoming a really commonly recommended tactic from a lot of national organizations. Many of you may have participated in Indivisible National's 1 Million Rising, which is recommending hosting gatherings to talk about methods of non-cooperation. The DNC recently set out a toolkit about hosting gatherings. And I want to kind of make them seem approachable, because sometimes groups issue these toolkits and they seem so complicated, and it really doesn't have to be. And again, I want to relay an anecdote of one of our leaders. His name's Matt. I don't believe he's here tonight, but in the middle of last year, um, he decided, sorry, he attended an IndiMarin meeting, and we were in the midst of the midterms and the presidential election, and he was helping, but he decided he wanted to get more people to help. So he invited his whole cul-de-sac over for a potluck, told them that there was a focus for the meeting, shared with them about what he had learned at a recent IndiMarin meeting where Lori had presented about all the things, all the ways that we could help win the midterms and the presidential election. Now, of course, it's a bit of a, we all need to hold our hearts a little because we didn't, but this was a moment where we were doing our best to win. And all of the people that came to his potluck from his cul-de-sac ended up becoming quite involved. Some of you who have done the protest may have seen the videos we've been able to produce of the multi-location protests in Marin. Well, the person that produces them is one of Matt's neighbors that got brought in through the potluck, and other people are doing other things. And then Matt took it a step further and took it upon himself to follow up with all of his neighbors a week later, because there was a conversation at the potluck and people were saying, yeah, I want to write postcards, or, I want to, get involved with the Marin Rapid Response Network, or a range of things. So then he followed up one by one and kind of served as a bit of a mentor cheerleader to all his neighbors. And now they're all on board, active, and very involved. So gatherings could be at your house, it could be at a coffee shop, a park, could get creative as you want, but think about hosting a gathering of people that you know, book club, whatever. And the other thing that we're really encouraging people to do is self-organized protests. I know we think about protests as something like you guys need to wait for us to tell you that such and such a day is a protest and such a location and a time, and then you sign up. So we get lots of emails because there's so many protests now being suggested at the national level. We get a lot of emails like, Are you doing something on this date? Are you doing something on that date? And we have been doing a lot, but we can't do every date because now it's practically weekly that there's some special protest. But if you're a person who likes protesting, you don't need to wait for any organization to tell you when or where. Again, invite some friends, maybe some friends who haven't yet gotten involved. Pick a day that works for everyone, pick a busy street corner, have some fun making signs. Get out there with your 5, your 10 people. Marianne did this just on Saturday. And, it was a great experience. You get people honking horns, waving, gets everyone excited. And then, of course, when it's all over, you say, okay, guys, well, this was just one thing we did, but let's keep it going. What more can we do? Be sure to join a local group. So again, these are all just examples. You can get your own creative juices going, but I think we need to look at this honestly as something that each and every one of us does each and every day. It might be one conversation one day, 5 conversations one day, an event you host one week, but let's do it because this is how we're going to get, honestly, this is how we're going to get to 3.5%. Next slide, please. Here are just some photos just to kind of bring it to life of some of the events and the events that people have done. So the upper right is Marianne's protest on Saturday in Novato. She ended up with I think 10 people. Her husband came out with a drum. It was very fun for everyone, very energizing. Lower left is a postcard party that was actually at my house a few years back. The center photo is one of our members who did go ahead and host a 1 Million Rising meeting. I don't know if you can make it out, but on the television screen are the slides for 1 Million Rising. So she took it upon herself to present, the slides and get people involved that way. Upper right is a woman who decided to just table one day. We loaned her our indivisible tablecloth. We might need to make up some more of those. We have another member, Rachel, who decided on her own she was going to the farmer's market, had a great spread of materials that she created and recruited a whole bunch of people. So what we're saying is, let your creativity and your initiative guide you and bring in people in whatever way fits for you. Next slide, please. So I quickly just want to, we're gonna stop sharing the slides and I'm going to share my screen and do a quick walkthrough of the website so you guys know where to find the links for all the stuff we've talked about tonight. I'm going to do it really quick because we want to save time for questions, but I encourage you all to go back on your own time and look at all the pages of the website. We do update them regularly, so if you haven't poured through the website in a month or so, there will be a lot of new material. Okay, so I guess I share now. Here we go. You guys see that? Okay, cool. All right, so this is our homepage. And you can see the way the nav bar is set up. We have these categories. Learn. If you're looking for Substack authors to follow or good news media to follow, we've got some recommendations under Learn. Fight. A main focus here right now is the protest rallies, and there's information for how to follow along with events coming up in Marin, or for those of you who don't live in Marin, there's information there. Then our elect page is where you'll find specific links if you want to write postcards or phone voters. Now, I do want to say that for both Virginia and the special election, we are waiting for some more specific links. So these pages aren't quite ready for prime time as far as the general election or Virginia. So encourage you to go back early next week and we'll have more links, and we'll also be sending all that information out via a newsletter. Lori, could you come off mute for a second? Did I get that right? That, or is there already Virginia stuff here?
There is already stuff for Virginia there.
Okay, all right, so I retract what I said. So there is already Virginia thing, so you can get going tonight if you want on that. And also for phone voters, for Virginia. And then next week, we'll get up more information about the special election. The build section is where you will find what I just walked through with personal outreach. There's a toolkit here that you can download that covers everything I talked about with a little more detail. Or you can just refresh your memory here on this page. Another important page under build that I want to point out is donate wisely. It is important that we keep donating, but we get barraged by a lot of requests. We do recommend that you do not donate to any text you receive from a PAC. There are a lot of PACs that are basically not scrupulous. So we recommend that you come to this page where we've really sorted out all of the legitimate groups. If you care about supporting the lawsuits that the legal groups are doing, we've got legal organizations. We've got here a link to support the California election. Indivisible National is doing amazing work. So anyway, I won't go through it all, but you can find very strategic ways to spend your political money to the extent that you can afford. The calendar is critical page. We put all of our upcoming meetings. We also put partner hosted meetings. So we highly recommend, for example, every Thursday, Ezra and Leah does this fabulous meeting, What's the Plan? Where you can get the latest response in the movement to the news of the day and how we're reacting. And if those times aren't good for you, they have a YouTube and you can watch them later. So again, I don't want to spend too much time here. I will say that on the homepage, this is the join us form. This is where you want to send your friends when you have those conversations. Just tell them, go to the indivisibleMarin.org, click on the join us form in the homepage, sign up, and then they will start getting our newsletters. And speaking of newsletters, we post our newsletters here on the recent newsletter section. If you feel like, gee, I haven't heard from IndiMarin in a while, I might have missed some newsletters, then you can find them here. So with that very rushed walkthrough, I'm going to stop sharing so we have some time for questions. I think I will start with the questions that came first that are here in this cheat sheet. This one should go to Lori, really. Is there any advantage in obtaining lists of voters and then determining from the list which Democrats did not vote and personally contacting them to urge them to vote?
That is exactly to the letter, the strategy that we use, that almost all groups use. Activate America is our postcarding partner. They also do a lot of phone banks here, and that's exactly what they do. They identify voters that we are called low propensity voters, and those are the ones that actually are most responsive to things like a phone call or a postcard. So if you're working with a strong group that actually has the ability to curate those lists and check voting records and look at which voters identify with which issues, then you're in a good place, and we'll be doing impactful work.
Great. Okay. Um, since I was presenting, I lost a little track of the chat, so now I'm just scanning the chat here. Great comment about music at protests. We actually have been incorporating it quite a bit. Highly encourage that. Like if you're going to self-organize, we have a playlist of protest songs that's on Spotify. So if you are interested in doing your own protest and want a playlist, just email us info@indivisibleMarin.org. You might want to put it as a contact so that you can always reach out with questions like that. Um, let's see, I saw a good one here. A question about donating to the DCCC, Lori. Oh, wait, I think that person left. Oh, no, she didn't. Sorry. Yeah, question about
Whether or not to donate to the DCCC?
So what are your thoughts about donating to the DCCC?
Yeah, Susan made some really good points right now. The only thing I wouldn't donate to right now are the super PACs, because we're involved in quite a thing with them on our side. The DCCC is fine. Right now, we don't have candidates, so you're giving to a group that is going to be holding on to that money. Although they will be helping us out in the California, some of that money will go to the special election. The thing with donating to the D-Trip is that you can't direct it to any particular candidate. If there's a particular candidate or district or state that appeals to you, I always say give directly to that campaign, because there's no overhead that goes to that. But certainly the D-Trip is a huge reason why we had such a good year last year. They did a great job with fundraising, and they did a really good job. The biggest
Right.
candidate, if you want to donate right now, the best candidate to donate to that is in the most need of money is John Ossoff in Georgia,
And that's on our page.
and that's on our page.
There's a few other comments about donating, so I just want to clarify. So someone mentioned, the Democratic Attorneys General Association, etc. If something isn't on our page, it doesn't mean they're not a good place to donate. As Lori said, the only thing that we're actually really advising against are PACs, because it's very hard to sort the reputable ones from the non-reputable ones. But what we've tried to do is create somewhat of a short list of the people or the groups that need the money the most now, so that it's more strategic. And the other thing we highly encourage is for you to set up your donations monthly, instead of let's say, instead of giving to a candidate or an organization $100 in one fell swoop. It's actually better to do $10 a month over the next year, because it allows them to plan. So what we like to recommend is that you think about, what is your budget for political giving for each, coming year? And whatever that dollar amount is, then choose, the groups that you think are the best choice for you, and figure out a way to set up monthly, so that you're giving monthly to strategic candidates or organizations. And the reason that matters is it allows them to count on incoming funds, so that then they can say, oh yeah, we can afford to hire an additional staffer because we know we've got this baseline of monthly donations coming in. Let me just see if there's non-donation stuff. Oh, about, somebody asked, do we have more specific guidance about how people can help in the special election? So we are waiting till next week. CADEM, the California Democratic Party, and Governor Newsom's people are collaborating as we speak on a plan, but it will not be rolled out until after the legislature votes. But we know from past experience, like with the recall in California, the basic overview. What will be different from what we've been doing in the midterms, we need to work in red districts, right? Red or purple districts, because we're so blue, we're not gonna work in a very blue district because our district doesn't need to be flipped. Now, this is almost the opposite. Our blue district is gonna be a very important district to winning this special election because it is people, Democrats, who are most likely to vote yes. So we will likely be called upon to canvass here in Marin in our own neighborhoods. We'll probably be asking you guys to canvass in your own neighborhoods or canvass in another neighborhood in Marin. There's a great app that makes it easy. There's a texting program coming. There's phone banking, there's postcarding, all the things we always do in elections, but what's different is a lot of our work will be in Marin, which will be kind of cool, right? I mean, we don't have to drive as far and we'll be talking more to people we know. So I'll just say kind of in closing, uh, this is a really dire moment. I mean, I don't need to tell you guys this, but we've been facing dire moments for 8 years, but this is like nothing else. And Trump is determined to rig the midterms, not only the redistricting, now he's talking about, preventing mail-in voting. So this is an emergency for democracy. And we have to just treat it as such and clear our personal decks as much as we can. I know, people some of you may have full-time jobs, some of you may have kids in the house. Obviously, you're going to be able to contribute less hours than those of us who are retired. But let's really just give it this our all to win this election in California. It could make the difference in whether Dems get back control of the House in 26, and that could make the difference in stopping Trump. So we got to do this, everyone, and we'll be with you every step of the way. We'll be sending you, please look for our emails. If you haven't saved info@indivisibleMarin.org to your contacts, please do, because that means our emails won't go to your spam. Can always write us, but this is going to be a really intense period, and I know you're all in for it because you're here tonight. So grateful for all you do and grateful that you came tonight. Thanks, everyone.